Hi everyone. In this video, I would like to go quickly over how to create in a quick fashion, the Halloween project visualization. So let me share my screen. So this is the data set that we have. The original data was actually year and an account. So I created the year and I show that in a different video where you can use the year function. So you can use the year function. For example, from here, and then enter, and then it gets you that function. So as for precipitation, so as it is required for this assignment that you need to embed or append an external data set or at least one variable. So I got this one from Underground or Wonderhound. So you can find websites, and I believe I shared with you a video how you can find this, and you can actually search for it. Based on the zip code, you can find actually the daily temperature, precipitation for certain zip codes for all years since 2008 until the present day. So we have the temperature. So we got all of those from that website. And then I added just the moon phase, and I found it from this website here. It's called Almanac. So you can find it there. So I added those and made sure that they are matching the years. So for 2008, that was the value for the moon phase, the same thing for the speed, the wind speed for each time slot for 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, and so on. So I already went through this in a different video, how you can embed this data. So now let's have a look at the data. So we need to make sure that we understand the data clearly so we can come up with interesting problems that we need to solve, right? What are the visualizations that we can create from this simple data set? So we have the time of the day, we have the day of the week, we have the year, and we have the count of candies or the count of visits for each time slot. In this case, for each time slot, at 6, we had 0 in 2008, 6:30, we had 75 visitors or candies distributed, assuming that every person will get one candy, right? And so on. So we have these values. So from this data that we can think about, Mr. Schaefer, he distributes these candies every year. So how can we create an analysis and in a visualization form where we can provide him with insights, with recommendations, what he needs to keep in mind when he is distributing candies during the Halloweens. So the first thing that comes to mind is we want to see what is the difference in terms of candies distributed in those time slots. Is there a peak time where Mr. Schaefer can maybe get some more help from maybe his friends or family? So that's one. In terms of the day, if Halloween happens to happen in certain day, are there certain days that are busier than others? So for example, Saturday happened in 2009 and then in 2015, right? So this data set, I did it for illustration base. So you can actually, until 2019, that way you can actually use your present data set, whatever the year is, 24, 25, or whatever it is. So you can continue, but don't use this one for your assignment. This one is just for illustration. You can follow along with me with this if you want, but you need to use the current data set that is updated to do your own assignment. This is just for illustration. So we have, are there certain days that if Halloween happens to happen on them, they are busier than others? So this gives us an insight that we need to use the average here and also the average here. So what about the years? Are there certain years that have had more turnout than other years? So we are going to explore those, right? So then we added some external data. So we want to explain some things that we found in these analyses that need some explanation, and we will see if any of those can explain them. So let's run our analysis, upload this data set into, so this is the data set into Tableau. Right, so I'm gonna drag this guy. So let's start by, we're going to start with the day of the week. Since it is here, we will see if there is any difference in terms of distribution, in terms of the day of the week. So the day of the week is here. And then I can add count here. And again, I'm not interested in the sum because again, Saturday happens twice. So now this is inflated. I need to use the average instead. Right, so now I can actually then, we say the rule of thumb is we need to make sure that we sort from high to low so we can see what is, to answer those questions, what are the busiest days, right, for candy distribution. And then we can do some cleaning and formatting for this graph. Again, those grid lines, we don't need them. The color, we need to be aesthetically sensitive. So this is a Halloween theme. So we need maybe something, a color that has to do with the Halloween. So let me add Halloween. Here, change it to average. And let me change the color here to Halloween theme, which is orange, I would say. And then I need to add the exact values because here it's an approximate. So the count to the labels, change it to average. Do I really need a fraction of a candy? I don't think I would give a fraction of a candy. So in this case, I need to format this guy to make it a whole number. And now, so now we have a repetition, kind of, we have the y-axis has values for average count of candies, and we have the average count of candies also here. So we need to get rid of this guy. So, and also the grid line, we don't need them. So let's clean this guy. So I'll go to format and click on those lines here. Go to rows, remove this guy. So I'll remove the rows. And I need to remove the axis ruler, this guy over here. And now looks good. So now I can go ahead here and uncheck, show header. So this guy, I don't need it. I'll hide it. And I'll need to give it meaningful name. So in this case, what can I call this one? Can I call it turnout by day? Or average distribution by day? Okay. Beautiful. So now we can add some design here. Right click and format. So let's give it a nice format here. Let's see if I can. I think it looks good. That looks orange, which is the theme. So this looks good. So now let's move on to the next one. So we said we want to look at the time. So now, actually, before we move on, what is the story that we are trying to say here? So we found out that actually Mondays and Tuesdays, the beginning of the week seems to be the busiest. So maybe we need to put a note here for Mr. Schaefer to tell him. So we'll go to annotate and point, and I will tell him it looks like Mondays and Tuesdays are the busiest. So might get ready for and ask for help or prepare more candy during those 2 days, right? So now we can just drag this one and put it somewhere there. So now we don't need actually to have a presentation. We can just send him those visualizations and he will understand what we mean. Now let's look at the time. So we said we want to look at the time distribution by time. So what we can do actually, I can just duplicate this guy. Instead of a day of the week, I can just put time. And so for the time, I want to organize also. Now I can see that the peak time is 7:30 and 7. Those are kind of the busiest. So if we want to be more, so we can just tell him, you need, if you are going to get need some help, you will need help between 7 and 7:30, right? It's up to you. Or if you want to say from 6:30 to till 8, or from 7 till 8. So it's up to you what you want to say, but based on this, maybe those top two, he might need help. So we can just put that annotation. You might need to get help from 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. Right, so this is our recommendation, and I'll just put it there. All right, so now let's see what is next. So the year, let's look at the year. So we're going to replicate or duplicate these guys. So for now, since we are going to deal with the year, we don't need to have average, because average will not be accurate. So instead, we want to have the sum. So we need the sum, right? Because average, it will average actually the time slots, the distribution by time for each day, right? So now we have this representative graph, and then we can do some formatting if we want. So we can get rid of the grid line. So the grid line, the columns actually. So now it looks beautiful. So now you notice that we have data points everywhere. We have labels for data points everywhere. So for us, we don't need to show. The best practice is to show the lowest point, the highest point, lowest point, and highest point. That way it doesn't look cluttered. So for this, what I will do is I will select those points that I don't want and press on Control, this guy. So I'm still pressing on Control and selecting those points that I don't want, while I'm still selecting, pressing on Control, right click, and then go to Mark Label, Never Show. Now I have very beautiful graph. So this is great, but if you notice that you might have noticed this, 2013, there was a dip, decrease in number of distribution of candies. And also in 2019, we might say that's pre-COVID, right? But at least in 2013, there is a dip. So let's explore why this guy is taking place. Now it is time for us actually to explore the external data set that we have added. So let's start with precipitation. Let's add the precipitation. So precipitation, I need the average because we don't want the sum because it sums every time slot for that day, from 6:30 until 7 and then and so on. It sums them. We don't want it to sum there. And so now we are in the average distribution. I'm just gonna, while it is highlighted here, I'm gonna remove it because I want to create what we call it here, dual access. So for the rain, let me keep this guy. We can keep it as line chart because line chart automatically actually was by default by Tableau, because it's very smart, selected for us the line chart. So now let's change the average precipitation. So this one, we need to change it by time. So by time. So here we can call it visits versus rain. All right, so now while we are actually in the average precipitation, let's change this instead of line. We need to change it to shape. Okay, so now we have the shape and we can clean up. So let's do this formatting. So rows on, okay. All right, let's remove these guys. We don't need them. Show header. Now we remove that. So now we have the count and we have the rains. Rains are here for precipitation values. So now let's work on the precipitation. So I'm going to click on this guy and I want the precipitation to drop it in the shape card and change it to average. All right, so now I have those. Now let's go to shapes. And I have those only 3 values. So when you have more years, you might have different values. So that's fine. So I'm going to go to the weather. Now I will assign each of those values a certain image. So when it was 0 rain, I will put the sun image. So I'll select this guy. So this is maybe cloud. It's barely raining. And this one we can assume, yes, it is raining. And then you can see it, but it's very small. So let's make it larger. A little bit, move it. Looks beautiful, isn't it? So now we have the rain. When it was raining, does it show that there was an effect? Maybe not. It was sunny here. I mean, there was no rain, but there was a dip, right? And here, this might explain this one, right? And this, but at least now we have this. We can say, if we want to make sure that there is significant difference or effect of rain versus candy distribution, actually what we can do is we can just double click on this guy and precipitation and see if there is a significant correlation. So this is how you create a scatter plot. You go to uncheck the aggregate measures so you can have scatter plot. So now let's go to the trend line and see if the value is, the p-value is not less than 0.05. So that means there is no significant value, significant difference or significant effect of rain on the candy distribution. So in this case, we can say that there is no, or rain doesn't really explain. So again, we can just go here. We can say rain doesn't affect visits or turnout. So we can just leave it somewhere here. It's beautiful. So now let's see what else we have. So we have rain. So let me duplicate this guy. Drag this guy and this guy. So how about temperature? You can do temperature, you can do speed, wind speed. And you can do moon phase. So we have done that. Let's see here for the wind speed count and wind speed. So it's barely almost 0.05. So still we can't, based on this, we can see marginally wind speed might marginally affect the turnout because the p-value is almost less than 0.05, but it's on that point. So in this case, I'll just leave that. Only one. You don't need to have so many graphs, but if you want, you can do that. So for me, we duplicated the visits per brain. I want to go through the moon phase. So for the moon phase, I'm just going to drag and drop the moon phase here. And so this is the moon phase, drag and select. Now let's do the dual axis. So the moon phase, again, I'm going to change it to shapes. So I'm going to drag and drop the moon phase to, before I do that, I need to change, instead of line, I need to change it to shapes, right? So now shapes, I'm going to drag and drop the moon phase to the shapes, change this guy to average. I need to change it to average. And also here, I want to change it to average. Okay, because I had, okay, so now let's have a look at how we can modify this beautiful moon phase values into proportions in this case. And actually, you can upload the moon phases images from Wikipedia or so on in here, and then you can use them as well. But for me, since this is a quick tutorial, you can use we can use this one for now. So this one is almost full moon. So I'm just gonna assign it full moon. Those two, I would say they are three quarters. This guy is a half moon, half moon. This one, I would say quarter, 1/4. And maybe this one is 1/4 too. Okay. And then we can use this guy as almost zero moon, and then say, okay. So now you can see, let's enlarge them. Let's enlarge. Now we can see that almost we have nice and beautiful moon phases. All right, so now we can say that. Do we see any? So when there was no moon, it was so people didn't show up. There was a full moon here. Okay. Okay. Here there was no moon, but there was. So let's see if, again, if the moon phase might explain. So let's do this, the analysis. Again, so it doesn't, so visits versus, or turnout versus moon phase. Right, so now we can say that moon doesn't affect turnout, but it's a beautiful analysis, right? So you can do so more stuff as well. For example, you can do forecast, you can do for next year. That way you can tell Mr. Schaefer what he needs to, how much candies he has to prepare. So in this case, you can do forecast. So forecast, so this is the forecast for next year or the year after, which is 2020, since we don't have that data, but you can compare that with the actual data since we already have that data now. All right, so now let's create our dashboard. Again, for the dashboard, we want to show the most important one on the left side and the least important one on the left top, the most important one on the left top corner. So let's see here. I'll just add these guys. So now you can just play with this, reduce maybe to 8, and then you can just plug it in and put it somewhere. Put it here. I can put it there. So add the title. To the title, we can call it Halloween. Here, and then let's do formatting. And let's use this theme for the whole thing. So now we have kind of a nice Halloween, and then you can add filtering. You can do more stuff to it, but you got the idea. This is what how it looks like, and this has some recommendations as well, has some notes, and also it will help to add the citations for this. So that's all that I wanted to go over in this video, and I hope you find it helpful. But for yours, when you do the redesign, it has to be different, and it has to be even better and nicer, and use different analyses, not only those ones that I showed you, because the purpose of it is for you to get trained, to get be creative and do something interesting and tell stories with data, right? So try to find something interesting, even if it is not significant, as we showed here, for example, the moon phases, the rain. At least you are testing it and you are telling us whether that had an impact or not. All right, so thank you, and all the best to you. And I will stop here.